Order. Paul Scully to move the motion.
I beg to move that this House has considered secondary school places in Sutton. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Owen. Some years ago, school place planning in Sutton, around London dictated that a number of schools, and especially across Sutton, contracted in size. As happened across London, though, it was quickly discovered that the plans were horrendously wrong, and the exact opposite was in fact required, with more people moving into the borough, a higher birth rate than originally predicted, and during the economic downturn, fewer parents sending their children to nearby independent schools. The London Borough of Sutton moved to expand primary schools across the area. Bulge classes and permanent new buildings sprung up in every school. Despite a number of people asking the question about secondary education, the council seemed to forget that the children had a funny habit of growing up and needing secondary school places as well. But we were assured that the council could cope. Now, secondary schools have been through the same process as primaries. New buildings and classes have popped up, and Stanley Park High School in Carshalton has moved to a new location and expanded considerably as a result. I was on the project board for that school when it was built, one of the last of the building schools for future projects. That was built on a former hospital site after more than a year wrangling between two public bodies, the council and the NHS. £1 million around that sum of taxpayers' money was spent on legal fees between the council and the NHS. From that experience, I know of the difficulties and the inertia when working with the public sector. In subsequent years, the private sector, who on the whole far more nimble, started to look at Sutton after development opportunities in surrounding boroughs were exhausted. Many of the plots of land that might have made it for a good school site were snapped up for residential, retail and other mixed development. Now we're scratching around to find sites that can deliver the infrastructure improvements that are required to support an expanding population. Sutton has a particular environment when it comes to schooling. It features on a regular basis at the top of the list of local education authorities in terms of results, which is one of the biggest attractions for families coming to Sutton. At the centre of this excellence are its 5 grammar schools. These selective schools have deservedly excellent reputations. However, their existence does mean that Sutton is a net importer of children, with students coming not only from neighbouring Croydon and Merton, but from central London and even the south coast. Pressure is therefore more acute in Sutton than many other parts of London. Should Wallington County Grammar School apply for and open an annex in Croydon as has been reported, this may help to alleviate the situation for school places in the east of the borough, keeping children in Croydon closer to home, but there's still a long way to go to secure enough secondary school places in the coming years to satisfy predicted demand. If I may, Mr Owen, I'll just quickly share a chronology of events that has led us to an impasse in securing the school places that we so desperately need. In November 2012, Sutton Council acknowledged that a new secondary school may have to be built in Sutton as early as 2015. Early reports showed that the predicted shortfall of places would be most acutely felt in the centre and to the north of Sutton Town Centre. In June 2013, the Sutton Council's Education Committee instructed officers to investigate sites for a new secondary school. That October, the same committee noted that a new secondary school would probably be required in 2017 or 2018. In the following January, the Council confirmed there was a requirement for a 10 form of entry new secondary school in 2017, as advised by the Secondary Schools Partnership. That's a body made up of senior representatives from all of the local secondary schools. That 10 form of entry was later changed to 8 forms of entry, an estimate that remains today. But it was reported that the council didn't have sufficient resources to build that school. In December 2013, the then MPs came out in public as supporting part of the soon-to-be redundant Sutton Hospital site as their favoured location for a new school opening in 2017. This site is in the south of the borough, close to the Surrey border. In March 2014, the council's secondary school expansion plan acknowledged the difficulty of identifying suitable sites for new schools, saying, "Due to the difficulty in acquiring even one suitable site, any new school should be as large as possible to take greatest advantage of such a site." In June 2014, the council's Education Committee was told that a site for a new secondary school would have to be acquired in the very near future, and there was a lead-in time of 2 to 3.5 years for getting the new school open. Therefore, any site would have to be sorted as early as 2016 for even a 2019 opening. At this time, the council was refusing to share with the public the long list of sites that they were looking at. So I started looking myself. and I noticed an overgrown, derelict, full-size artificial football pitch at the back of a park in Rose Hill, just to the north of Sutton Town Centre, where demand is most acute. This was at the time out to tender for a five-side football pitch arrangement after years of being left unused and locked up. The council already owned this land, so it would clearly save money. I spoke to the owners of Sutton Sports Village, a world-class tennis academy that's immediately adjacent to that site. They were supportive of a school being located there and expressed an interest in sparking up a partnership when it eventually opened. In November 2014, Sutton Council announced that it had identified 2 sites for a new secondary school, part of the Sutton Hospital site and Rose Hill all-weather pitch, my preferred site. They commissioned their own feasibility studies for both sites, despite the fact that the Education Funding Agency, who are ultimately responsible for choosing the plot, would conduct their own. Before the council studies were complete, the council spent around £8 million on buying some land on the Sutton Hospital site from the NHS. This parcel of land wasn't the same as the first one envisaged as being suitable for a school. In fact, the council's own feasibility study, when it was completed, showed that it was only 20% of the recommended site size for an 8-form entry secondary school. There'd be no playing fields, no recreational area. So in reality, any school on that plot, to fulfil demand, would have to be in the order of 4 stories high, built close to the street line, and situated just 2 metres from the closest family home. It would be totally out of keeping with the area, and as someone who sat on Sutton's planning committee as a councillor for 4 years, I can't envisage how such a proposal would ever get planning permission from anyone with an independent eye. In June 2015, the Education Funding Agency confirmed that Sutton Hospital site was too small, but cleared the Rose Hill site to proceed, leaving it as Sutton's only viable new school site. The council and the EFA continued talks over the summer, leading the EFA to believe that heads of terms would soon be agreed, when I met the person in the charge of negotiations at that time on the 16th of September. However, just 2 days later, Sutton Council's political administration pulled the plug on this site, saying that they would not release the land at Rose Hill, insisting that the school could only be built on the land at Sutton Hospital. Last month, the approved sponsor for the proposed free school, the Greenshaw Learning Trust, said that the land the council had bought at Sutton Hospital was not sufficient for the school that they have approval for, and that they are still looking for the site. The EFA have confirmed that they are helping them in this endeavour, and so we reached the current deadlock. Now, there are 3 options that are available to move this matter on. The EFA can try to buy more land at the Sutton Hospital site, which will cost even more money, will leave the school in the wrong part of Sutton still, and will start to eat into land that is earmarked for an ambitious joint venture for a cancer research hub between the Council, the Royal Marsden, the Institute of Cancer Research, and the Epsom and St Helier NHS Trust. It will be an expensive, short-term fix which would hamper strategic plans, all because of an intransigent approach at this stage. A new provider on the site wouldn't get Department of Education approval until next summer at the earliest for a free school, thus delaying the project for yet another year. There's also the small matter of the Chief Executive of the Hospital Trust making it clear that he has no interest in selling off more of the site. The second option is another site could be found. There is examples of free schools across the country that have been built in unconventional styles. Fresh thinking may throw up an interesting use of an as-yet unidentified site. Now, Mr. Owen, I like to think that I'm up for a bit of creative thinking, but over the last 2 years, nothing has come to mind in that regard. The third option is the most obvious option. That's to look again at the Rose Hill site. The political administration of the council, i.e. the senior Liberal Democrat councillors, dismissed this site as it's classified as metropolitan open land. But this environmental argument is inconsistent for a number of reasons. The Sutton Council was happy to build an incinerator on metropolitan open land in another part of the borough. They're also planning a primary school on metropolitan open land in Hackbridge. It only appears that metropolitan open land on this site, in the ward represented by the leader of Sutton Council, is immune for consideration this side of the 2018 local elections. In fact, the site hasn't been dismissed as being available for any second school that's required by 2020, so we may see a school here anyway, just too late. Sutton's fortunate to have many parks and open spaces, so I didn't come to this conclusion easily, but that this site was best. It's just as London expands and local residents wonder how their children will be able to afford housing in the area where they grew up, We need to plan to meet that demand, and of course we need to plan to cope with the resulting pressure on infrastructure. The Rose Hill solution addresses this as best it can. That was echoed by a valuer who looked at the site, who said it was the best site for a school that he'd seen in years. The footprint of the school building can be contained on the plot of the current derelict artificial pitch. Car parking can be limited to an already concreted area to the north of the site. And the parkland can not only remain, but in being used as playing fields, can be maintained by the school and its use shared with the community. I regularly speak to the Mayor about the need for a Sutton tram extension, which is included in the Mayor's plan for London. The proposed route for that tram extension runs along the front of Rose Hill, and a train station is located close by. Several buses run along the two roads that surround the site. Now that's in contrast with a junction at the Sutton Hospital site that would inevitably have to be remodelled to cope with the increased traffic, and that site also has fewer public transport links. Now there are two secondary schools already close to the Rose Hill site, Greenshaw, which is the original school behind the Greenshaw Learning Trust, and Glenthorne. Both are incredibly popular schools and successful schools and regularly oversubscribed. Whereas there is only one near Sutton Hospital, Overton Grange. Now, this might seem at first glance to suggest that there's a shortage of spaces in the south. However, actually, I believe that Overton has been less popular in recent years and so has been undersubscribed. The biggest centre of demand would appear to be in the roads around the Sutton bus garage to the north of Sutton Town Centre. Now, although the Minister represents a seat close to Cheam, Sutton and Cheam, I wouldn't expect him to know the exact geography around that area. I'm always happy to show you around, though. But suffice to say that the Sutton bus garage is only within a 5 to 10 minute walk of the Rose Hill site. Mr. Owen, we need immediate action. Residents have been waiting for years to see something at least get started. Just as we thought this was happening, things came to a juddering halt when the matter became politically difficult. It was put off in the lead up to the 2014 local elections and again for this year's general election. We can't have the 2018 local election dictating school place planning policy in Sutton. We need proper reconsideration of the council's position in a measured and open way. We can't continue with the approach that they've been taking lately, which has spurred me to bring the matter to the Minister in this way. The first thing that the EFA, or the approved school provider, the Greenshaw Learning Trust, knew about the decision to about turn and refuse to release the Rose Hill site was via a press release that they received indirectly. Mr. Owen, that's no way to conduct business. There's not a lot that gets me annoyed, but the fact that this was clearly playing politics with the education of our current cohort of 9-year-olds who risk not getting a local school place in just 2 years' time, frankly appalls me. I can't help thinking that when the Mayor looks at this, when considering whether to invest in the tram extension, or international cancer research companies that look at the proposed London Cancer Hub in the south of Sutton, or developers look to Sutton for opportunities to build the housing that we so badly need, they'll think again. They'll wonder if the time, energy and money spent in early planning may lead to a rug suddenly pulled from them on a political whim. They'll be reluctant to work with a local authority that conducts its discussions via press release. Sutton Council says that they can get a school open on the Sutton Hospital site, but there's no evidence of any achievable plans. We need a school to accommodate 240 pupils in just 2 years' time, simply in order to get started in meeting demand. We know it takes 2 to 3.5 years to build, and we still don't have a site. Securing planning permission on any site won't be straightforward. Now, I'm all for local decision-making. I'm very much in favour of greater local accountability. However, I do not believe that the parents of 9-year-old children at the moment are aware of the totally avoidable crisis that we're facing as a direct result of their locally elected representatives. So I hope the Minister can help to break the impasse and step in, to get the Council to take a truly strategic, common-sense view, to break the deadlock and secure the school places that the Council are failing to achieve and we so desperately need. Thank you, Mr. Owen.
The question is,